Righto, so phase one to this whole mess is to get the bike warmed up. You can do it with the bike cold. It just, oil flows a little better when it's warm, so warm it up for a minute or two, and not too hot because I don't want to burn myself in hot oil, but yeah, bring it in and change things out. Alright, so got my stuff. The bike is warmed up. It's not super hot or anything, but from there, gonna need an 8mm to take off the skid plate and for the main filter, and then the 17mm for the other 3 bolts. And use a pair of needle nose to pull out the mesh oil filters and then the main filter. So first up, get this skid plate off. It should, the camera's probably hitting on everything. Should be this single bolt. And then it kind of pries out of here. So at this point, skid plate is not holding on to anything except there's a little plastic piece that goes between the engine and the frame holding it up there. So if you take this bad boy and you kind of pry down the back and you want to pull it to one side. There we go, slowly but surely. Hopefully I'm not going to break it. I'm always concerned I'm going to break it. And it should just fall out of here now. There we go. There we go. So there you can see that latch is over the upside of the frame. So it's going to pivot it in like that. Anyway, skid plate off. So you're going to have a main drain bolt and then 3 places for a filter. So your main drain bolt, hopefully you can see it, is this silver guy right here. And then this will be a filter, and this is the main filter. So let's get this guy off. And this is my first filter change, or first oil change, period. So I don't know what I'm going to see in here. Alright, so this is the OEM oil with a little bit of whatever mineral oil I had when I got the bike, because it looked like it was a little low. But there's my drain plug, and that's it is magnetic. You see. So that's the stuff that I've worn off in the first 60 miles as far as whatever little shit, which isn't much. I mean, I always expect to see some little pieces of metal on the magnetic drain plugs. Just kind of clean it off and you're good to go. And if I look at the oil, oil looks fine. Very thin, almost watery, but fine. So we will let that guy So we'll leave this plug out for our main plug. Now we're going to bring out our others. So this black plug is going to be a mesh filter in here. And you're going to get oil coming out as well. That's interesting. Usually those go all the way in. That cap's a little different, I think. Or maybe the filter is. I don't know. It feels a little different than my other one. Anyway, mesh filter, but honestly, I'll clean this off with just some compressed air in a minute here. But it's pretty darn clean. I don't really see any metal pieces or anything like that on it. Alright, so now there's another one of those mesh filters on this other side. Kind of the kitty corner, opposite corner on the engine. None of these bolts should be really that tight. Keep that in mind when you're doing this. These are usually like steel bolts on a aluminum or magnesium engine case, so don't over torque things. Is that my skid plate bolt? I should keep that with the skid plate. Don't want to lose bolts. The garage is messy enough as it is. Alright, so mesh strainer out. See how this mesh strainer didn't actually come out with that cap? So I got my cap here, but the mesh filter is still in there. So we'll grab it here with my handy dandy needle nose pliers. And do the same thing to that one. We'll blow it out with some compressed air just to clean it off. Alrighty. Final part is the main filter. So main filter right here, you got 2 bolts. Whenever I have 2 bolts like this, I like to alternate, and that kind of broke a little harder than I was expecting. But it's not on there that tight either, as far as the springs. But there is a spring behind this. So there's the cap, got the spring and the 2 bolts. And finally you have the oil filter in there. Easy way to get that out is use your magnetic drain plug. Just tap it on the end, pull it out, bada boom. There's the filter. Actually it looks just fine. Honestly, I shouldn't even be changing it. And you can see on the filter it actually says NC250. So that is nice to know, just to confirm. Everything looks the same on the bottom end, but yeah, you never really truly know with some of this stuff until you start taking it apart. So one thing I noticed about this bike when you're doing an oil change is since the header's bigger, it's actually a little harder to get the oil fill cap. So you do need a funnel to get to this thing. Take note on your oil fill cap. It will tell you how much oil the engine takes. So if you look at that guy, it says 1500 milliliters. Cool. So I always just take a dab of oil on my finger, make sure to oil it up. Just around the rubber to make sure it's good going in. And if you're ever forgetting, remember you used the drain plug to pull it out, so it was metal on the outside. It was not the rubber part on the outside, so rubber goes in. And then you will have your cap with the spring. Spring just kind of sits there, so do be careful. It will fall out. You can just pull this out like that. Spring on. Start these guys by hand. Make sure you never cross threading bolts. And I am not going to use a torque wrench on this because I don't really. So that's just to where it kind of stopped and easy. And then I'm just going to give it a little bit more. Like nothing, maybe 10 foot-pounds of, probably less than that. Actually, I'm sure it's less than that. This is probably about 6 to 8 foot-pounds of torque. my torque wrench right here. One's done. I know some people use like WD-40 and stuff to clean that out, but I don't know. That's fine by me. Just blowing the shit out of there so it's can still filter. So every time I've done this on the old one, I've pushed this in first because you'll kind of feel it seat in the back. So you get to that point, you can still see it sitting out just a little bit. You can push it down and it just seats in there. And it'll kind of stay up because, as you noticed, it sits into this cap. So the cap will kind of go around it. Don't force the cap on, or don't force this nut on. Same dealio, just hand tight first. Then we'll go back through with the wrench and clean it up. So let's clean up our other filter. And same thing on this side. I put the filter in. You can kind of feel it. It'll seat in there. And then just start this bolt or this nut. And it should go on nice and easy. Last thing is the main drain plug. Put this guy back in and then we'll tighten down all these 17mm bolts. At this point, I'm done with all my tools. Got my filter changed, cleaned out the mesh filters, and dropped out all my oil by opening everything up at once. Now it's a matter of refilling it. You can refill it from right here as well, which maybe I should do that. Maybe that'd be easier. Yeah, whatever. I'm not too really worried about my motorcycle oil. I'm just using some AMSOIL motorcycle. Like, this is synthetic stuff. I start with the mineral oil on these, run them through a little bit, and then I like changing over to synthetic. That's just me. I did feel like the clutch was a little bit better, a little smoother with the synthetic, but this clutch has actually felt a lot smoother than that one's clutch since like starting up. Now if you look at this, it's really high up. It's at the high point, and I actually still have probably 100-200 milliliters of oil in this jug, and that's just because you need to turn it on. It's going to suck things down around and suck a little more down in there. So I'm going to put just a little bit more on. Just top her off. Alrighty. Let's see if she starts back up after that. And that was just to move the oil around. So yeah, need a little more in there, which I do have more in my jug. Like I said, I had about 1.5 liters in there. It says it takes 1.5, and I usually find it's pretty darn close to that. So final check. I'll leave the bike just kind of upright. I'm just holding it straight up and down, and I can see my oils going right up the top of the sight glass. Like when I lean it over on the kickstand, it's about a third of the way up. But yeah, that's changing the oil. Hardest part is remembering all of the filters that go along with it, because there's the two mesh filters, one on each side. And the paper filter, this paper filter, you can also get a mesh version of that on AliExpress. As far as those paper filters, you have to buy those either from GPX, CSC, California Cycle Company, or AliExpress. They're not anything you're going to find at any normal bike store. So you got to plan that part ahead for that filter. Anyway, let me do one last startup just to be 100% because I'm going riding tomorrow.